Today I'm talking with Hetal. Hetal is a meditative art illustrator who believes in the power of patterns to achieve mental peace and clarity. In this session, we talk about her journey, the definition of art, what meditative art is, and the process to get started. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Hetal. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Deepak. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you here. Hetal, before we start, again, a quick, brief introduction to your background, to who you are, to who you have been to this point.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, my name is Hetal, and I call myself a meditative pattern artist. Now, before I get into that, that's a recent thing, but a bit of a background. I come from a very humble background from a middle class family. I've been born and brought up in Mumbai, and I stayed with my parents till I got married. I completed my engineering and I got into IT. I mean, I didn't pursue engineering as such, but worked in an IT company. And then the last company I worked with was Capgemini.
Mm.
I worked in the IT industry for 18 years, 18 good years, with a whole lot of exposure. And 5 years ago, that's when I felt that there's something more I need to do. And there were a couple of other reasons wherein I said I have to take a break. So I worked as an engagement manager. I managed big teams. I traveled quite a bit when I was in the IT field, in the corporate world. And then there were a couple of reasons, not just one, why I quit the company. It's the best company I could have ever worked with. I loved working there. And then 2017, I took a break.
Mm.
My daughter was just 2 years old, and I thought there's much more to what I can do, you know. So I needed some time to myself. I took a break, and then something happened. Like a lot of transformation. Something was brewing. It came to the surface during the pandemic, and and a lot of things happened. And I came across my not came across I came across meditative patterns, but I revived my long lost passion of creating art.
Mm.
That is something I had done almost, I would say, 27 years ago. When I was in school, I must have drawn last. And of course, in engineering, it was all related to the submissions. But I started drawing in these last, I would say, 3 years. And that's when I came across this passion of mine. And I realized it's my life purpose. I'll come to that later, but yeah. And that's how I got into meditative patterns. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Interesting. So, before we get to art, meditation, meditative art, did you have any sort of a spiritual lineage prior to your foray into art and meditative art?
Not really. I was just doing yoga
Mm.
in 2018. That's when, like, I was on a break and I wanted to do something. I had to lose weight. That was one reason. But then spiritually, I got inclined after I took a break.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened. But yeah, otherwise, I didn't have any. Nor did I have an artistic background. Just that I loved drawing. I was very good at it in school.
Mm.
And I wanted to pursue art. When, like, instead of engineering, I should have become an artist. But I the only thing that stopped me was I was afraid, or I didn't like drawing human figures, portraits. And that is one main subject in art. So I didn't pursue that and I became an engineer.
So, Hetal, how do you define art?
Okay. For me, art is an expression of your emotions. That's how I define art. Uh, when you will notice, or at least I have observed, whenever you are drawing something, it it leads to an expression of your emotions, when you're drawing it on your own, not when you are guided by somebody. And the colors also play a very important role when you're drawing, and when you're in a very vibrant, upbeat mood. You will see your drawing, your strokes are very confident. They are very good, and the colors that you tend to choose are also very vibrant.
Hmm.
But when at the same time, when you are very sad or you are in a depressed state or very stressed, you will notice that your lines are not very confident. What you draw, it comes out in your drawing. And at the same time, the colors that you will use will be very dark tones, very deep shades. They won't be vibrant. So for me, definitely art is a form of an expression of your emotions.
And usually, when we talk about art, right, there is an external perspective to it, the manifestation, and there is an internal perspective to it, from where it's
Mm,
emerging. Do you
yeah.
tend to separate, or do you tend to distinct between these two perspectives, and how do they merge together?
Um, can can you elaborate on that?
Right. So when we talk about art,
Mm,
there is this focus on the output form of it, right? There is,
okay.
I mean, even if
Mm,
we set aside the commercial aspects of it,
yeah.
there is still
Mm,
this, right? For a painter,
yes.
the
Yes.
expression might be from an inside, but the
Correct.
manifestation is on a canvas. So
Mm,
even in your workshops or in your own frame of mind, do you tend to
mm.
separate these two, or you tend to put them as a merging?
No, I think it comes as a merging for me.
Hmm.
I have never looked at art as a commercial form, Whatever comes to me comes very intuitively. It's like I realized that this is my niche, meditative patterns. And as far as meditative patterns are concerned, I don't think you can commercialize
Hmm.
those. It is something that comes out of your heart and very intuitively and at the moment. So I never distinguish them like this. It's always about the process to get
Right.
into a meditative state.
So into this process, and coming back to the core idea of mindfulness through meditative art,
Mm,
could you explain what is it, what is the process, and what was your own thought process behind getting into it?
yeah. Um, as I said, there was, or I'm still undergoing that transformational journey, and I was searching and doing a lot of reading from Google on self improvement, on the spirituality aspect and stuff. And one fine day, I came across these patterns, these beautiful patterns, but they were not really called meditative patterns. They were like, I just saw them and I really loved it. And I said, yeah, I want to draw them.
Hmm.
And I came across these on Skillshare, uh, on when I was searching on Google. And I decided to like just enroll for this course. And like it was so beautiful that I just got engrossed in drawing it. But then later, when I tried to find more information about it, it wasn't available. Like even now, when you see on Google, you will not find anything or say like meditative patterns. Maybe they are named differently, Zentangles, mandalas, and people know all of that. But then you won't find a lot of info. There'll be generic info, like what are the benefits out of meditative art and stuff like that. And I can assure you, even Chat GPT wouldn't have that kind of info. I have
Hmm.
tried searching, but I
Hmm.
didn't find. So I came across it during the end of December 2020. That's when the pandemic was at its peak. And I started drawing. And what happened was during that phase, I started, I loved it, and I got a slip disc, a cervical slip disc. And it was like really bad. For 3 months, this right hand of mine was numb. I couldn't draw. And every time, like I did the physiotherapy also online, I couldn't go physically to the physiotherapist, to the clinic. So every time we had a session twice a week, I would ask the physiotherapist, when can I draw? Please tell
Hmm.
me. And then after 3 months, in March, one fine day, she said, you can try drawing today or start with 15 minutes. and I was so happy. The first thing I drew was one of the meditative patterns. I like resumed. And that's how the journey started. Why I call it meditative patterns is because uh, I have been exploring all these, like it's been 2 years now that I have been drawing these patterns. And at that time, I felt that expression, it intuitively, like I could draw, and I felt a lot of peace, a lot of reduction in my stress levels. So I realized that it definitely has a meditative value. There are certain patterns, certain basic shapes when you draw, and when you draw in a certain way, it gives you that calm and that focus. And I started explore. I was trying to get a lot of info on the internet on Google, but there hardly was any. So I started exploring it myself. I read a lot of books. I went into a lot of scriptures and stuff like that. And I also kept drawing and seeing the experiences, like with each emotion, how does it feel when I draw a certain pattern or when I draw a certain shape. And that's how I arrived at this name, like meditative pattern art. It is indeed meditative, and I have experienced firsthand how does it feel.
Okay, so couple of questions that came out of that segment. One is, do you think there is a form of art which is, so there is this meditative art which you think you are attributing to the patterns which you are creating, and there is something special on them which we'll just get to in a moment. But other forms of art, how would you associate meditation with them? Do you think there is a distinction being made here between other forms of art and this specific pattern art?
Yes, in other forms of art, like I have been drawing and painting as well long ago. I don't paint much now, but in the other forms of art also, of course, there is meditative value. You are drawing something that you like, or like
Right.
whatever you feel like drawing, and you indulge in it creatively. You get the fun out of it, and like consciously you do not realize that I'm getting into a meditative state, or you just feel happy after you've drawn those. But then when it comes to meditative patterns, it you know like if you follow the procedure step by step into it, and you are like I would say a human mind loves patterns. So when I'm drawing as an artist, if I'm drawing something, I'm creating something like which is understandable by the outside world, or I'm creating some portrait, some landscape or something. In case of meditative art, most of it is abstract. You do not have any form to it, but it has repetitive patterns. The mind likes patterns, and when I'm drawing or I'm making someone draw, those we start with simple basic shapes, and you keep repeating those patterns. So when you repeat the patterns, you get into that flow state. You just keep focusing on drawing those patterns, and it takes your mind off whatever stress or anxiety you have. It literally takes you off that when you practice it regularly. So as an artist, like my focus would be on, if I was an artist, my focus would be on the output. But as a meditative pattern artist, or when I get someone else to do it, the focus will be on the process and not the outcome. I'm not worried about the beauty aspect of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction there, right? Where is the focus? But I think somewhere you also mentioned that consciously you're getting into this time you've set aside. It is not for an output which is to be done, whatever you want to do with it.
Yes.
It's a process where you're improving or working on yourself. So there is that
Yes.
intention aspect
Correct.
which is prior to this meditative art, which probably is leveraging towards that. Uh,
Yes.
could you also explain? So you mentioned something about when you follow the process and the procedures.
Mm.
Could you just give a brief overview of what
Yes,
this
sure.
process is?
one more thing that I wanted to mention is why it is called, one more reason why it's called meditative art is like,
Mm.
I'm specific, like when you do a normal meditation, it's a ritual that you follow on a daily basis. You set aside time for it. You'll sit in a quiet place and you meditate, right? So there are people who really can't, like, at least for me, I used to find it very difficult to meditate, close your eyes, sit and just meditate. But when I did this art form, I realized that, yeah, I'm able to meditate with my
Mm.
eyes open. I don't need to close my eyes and sit, or I don't need to put an incense stick and sit there and just meditate. So that's one more reason. And it's a conscious effort. Just like we have a meditation ritual, you have this meditative pattern art ritual wherein you make some time every on a daily basis, and only then can you experience its benefits. Just like meditation, if you just do it for one day and you wouldn't get the benefits, it's a similar thing with meditative pattern. And about the procedure, it's again similar to meditation, because I would request whoever is doing this,
Mm.
like, when we, either if we are in a group, it's fine because we are all like-minded people. Somebody who has come to learn meditative art has that spiritual aspect and has something going on in their mind because of which they've come to learn it. So if we are in a group, fine. We need silence. And if you're doing it alone on your own, you have to ensure that you are sitting in solitude. Ensure that nobody is disturbing you around or there's not a lot of noise. Select a quiet corner. You don't need to decorate your place, or, I mean, I'm not so particular about that. Just find your favorite corner. For me, it works when I sit down on the floor and I have a pillow on my lap. That's my childhood habit. And I just take my sketchbook and I start drawing with my pen.
Mm.
That's all. You need a quiet corner. And if you like, you can have your favorite tea or coffee or some beverage or some music and just get going. That's all you need.
And in terms of the duration, how long do you do it?
Yes. In terms of duration, a small A6 sheet of paper that would take you, when you draw meditative patterns, that would take you around 1.5 hours. And because we use fine micro tip pens, there's a reason why we use them. We do not use other sketch pens. You can draw very fast with that. But we use micro tip pens. So the art form, that art takes around, mm, like, depending on the thickness of your nib, it will take around 1.5, 2 hours, and depending on the pattern as well. So I never do everything at a stretch. I would spend around 20 to 30 minutes a day. That's it. Or to begin with, you can even spend only 15 minutes a day. Even that is good enough. You don't need to finish everything at one stretch, or you do not need to sit for half an hour. If
Mm.
you, even if you can make 10 or 15 minutes a day, that is very good. So you can decide the duration.
And in terms of the patterns which you are drawing, are these specific patterns or it's more of an individual outlet?
No, it's more of an individual outlet. Like,
Mm.
whatever patterns I draw, they come very intuitively to me. But then I would like to explain, like, mention one thing. Now, when I'm drawing, um, I connect it to an emotion. Like, when you are in a certain emotional state or when you want to achieve something, I would draw a certain pattern. Like circles, for example, they are the most loved shape.
Mm.
Everyone loves circles. They are not at all intimidating and stuff like that. But then when it comes to triangles, for example, I don't like drawing triangles. So when I'm in a very stressed state, I will never draw a triangle because that makes me uncomfortable. But for someone else, it might be very soothing. So it's very individualistic. Whereas if I want to step out of my comfort zone, I mean, I'm procrastinating, or there's something I do not want to do, but I have to do it or I should do it, then I will sit with a pattern which consists of triangles because they will get me out of my comfort zone. So it's very individualistic. But
Right.
then, having said that, it doesn't mean that someone who doesn't like triangles, and when I'm doing it in a group, you still do it. That's fine. You will definitely get some value out of
And so you started with your own individual practice and now you are doing workshops teaching
it.
others.
Yeah, individual practice. Yeah, as I said, I learned a lot online or from wherever I could, specifically Skillshare.
Hmm.
Like I learned quite a bit from there and from my mentor who had put her first class there on Skillshare. And then I there was a point when I was really scared to even share that my work with the world, and I was not very confident. But the more I started researching, I started posting my work on social media. One fine day, I gathered all the guts and I said, let me do it. So that's how I started posting my work, and people started liking it. So, as such, I have not really taken workshops, but I'm getting a good amount of input on the social media itself.
Hmm.
People are drawing and sharing their patterns based on the videos that I share.
So, in terms of, so you've been doing this for a few years now,
2 years,
two
yes.
years now. So, what changes, Hetal, have you? I mean, so there is this process, which I'm assuming
Mm.
just by virtue of being able to take a distance from our usual rushing mind, there's a benefit to be had in that specific moment, which you are
Yes.
setting aside for this. It may be 30 minutes, it may be 1 hour. But all that
Mm.
time, there is definitely a distance, and I'm assuming there is an immediate benefit. But in
Yes.
terms of the changes which have come in times when you're not doing this, or in your daily life, or in your daily
Mm.
interaction, how have you observed those?
Yeah. Um, one major thing that has happened with me is I have become very aware, like very aware of what's going on, the thought process in my mind, the kind of patterns I've had till now, mostly the limiting or the negative patterns that I've had. I've become very aware of those.
Hmm.
And also, like when I'm doing the patterns, or I get certain messages intuitively, which I never got before. Before these last 2 years, I was never spiritual. I never got such messages. So I do get certain messages, and those are the messages which tell me I have to implement this thing or I need to do this. So it's an inner voice that has started coming up every now and then whenever I draw meditative patterns. So that change has come in me in the last 2 years.
And has it also carried forward in your interactions with other people, or in any other aspect of your life?
Yeah. One thing that recently I've started hearing is people, you have a very calm voice and a
Hmm.
calming effect. I was surprised to know that. Now, nobody has said that to me. And I was more aggressive earlier. That has really changed. I'm very surprised to get that comment from somebody. I mean, not only from one people, but a few of them have said that, have noticed that about me.
Interesting. And uh, like a few final questions, Hetal, is that when you look at this practice as a meditative art or
Mm.
pattern drawing, do you think there is a specific type of person who will be more attracted towards it, or who would gain more from it, and somebody who would have more resistance towards it? Because something when you mentioned initially was that the traditional types of meditation, let's say breath
Correct.
meditation or japa, or some other kind of meditation,
Mm.
obviously since the mind is rushing, it becomes very difficult for some people to hold their attention for X amount of time. And during practice,
Mm.
it builds up. But
Yeah.
also when it comes to meditative art, is it a specific type of people who would have more resistance? And is a specific type who would have more affinity?
Yes. Um, like I have a person at home, my husband.
Mm.
He has no idea about meditate. I've been doing this for 2 years, but he would never try. Like he has a lot of questions. People who are very logical and just like very methodical, they probably will have a lot of resistance to this kind of art, and uh, a lot of affinity from the people who are, very spiritual, or I don't know, but the ones who are very logical, they will not, they will have a lot of resistance doing this
Hmm.
artwork.
Maybe they
But
will like to draw
hmm,
triangles.
maybe,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, yeah, but that's what I've observed, and a lot of resistance because many of them feel I'm not an artist. But I want to reiterate again, you don't need to be good at drawing. You don't need to have those skills to draw meditative patterns. That you just have to
Hmm.
follow the process. And as long as you're able to draw a few lines and a few shapes, you're good.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering whether, since this is not really an established form of meditation or a known form of meditation, I
Mm,
wonder if there is also this thinking that, okay, this is only wasting my time, or this is not leading towards anything, and that bridge is only crossed once you start actually doing it. So there
mm.
is that initial hurdle which might be there.
Possible, yes. It might be there, and also you won't see the results instantly.
Hmm.
You have to. It's just like any other meditation. You have to keep practicing it as a ritual to really see the benefits. So yes, there will be hurdles. There are hurdles. I find it difficult. And yes, one more category of audience. Sorry, I just came back to it, but who do not like this kind of meditative art or wouldn't like to try are small kids,
Hmm.
like younger kids. They will not like this art. I can say that because my daughter, she never likes. She's like, Mama, I don't like it. And but kids who are older than 10 years old, 12,
Hmm.
15, they love it, but the younger ones will not.
Yeah, there is probably a minimal attention span needed before you can actually complete or at least
um,
do somewhere of the pattern.
and also when you see meditative patterns, there is some kind of there is some effect in it.
Hmm.
Kids do not like those repeat patterns because if you see, kids are very they are very spontaneous and they do what they like.
Hmm.
They wouldn't like to follow patterns. Patterns are formed as you grow bigger. They will not do it, but everyone else, I think, can and should try this form of art.
Fascinating, Hetal, and we would love for you to share some of those patterns which you have created.
Yeah.
But before we end, any particular, I mean, again, this is mindfulness, meditation, art, but any particular anecdote, story, quotation which has stuck with you over the years, which you feel is still a driving force?
Yeah. uh, Not directly related to
Mm.
meditative art, but this one thing has recently, like, it's something I'll never forget, and I'll always ensure that I do it. And that is, um, whatever you resist persists.
Mm.
Whatever you reject will always persist. So learn to let go, learn to forgive. And that's what I have learned from this meditative art. It has really helped me calm down a lot. I realized that about me, that I was resisting certain things and they were persisting. So the moment I decided, like, through this meditative art, I kept drawing, it reduced my anxiety. I literally could feel that stress level going down. And when I drew, I also started getting solutions to those problems. So this is one thing which I loved when I read it somewhere. I heard, and it said, whatever you resist persists. So do not resist.
Perfect. I think a large part of this resistance is what is counteracted by letting go, and art is a fundamental medium of letting your inner expression flow out without inhibitions, without
Yes.
all those biases and everything. Even something which you said earlier is that self-conscious aspect of putting your art out there and letting people see, that often is also a byproduct of some sort of resistance of judgment or fear
Yes.
or all those aspects.
Yeah.
Fascinating, Hetal. This has been quite interesting conversation, and I would love again to see your meditative art, and we'll share it on this video as well. It's been lovely talking to you. Good luck, and I hope more people try this form of meditative art. It's new, but I can definitely see how it enters into the paradigm of taking some time for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I'm so grateful that you invited me at your podcast and helped me convey this to others. I really want people to try this art form and see if it, I'm sure it will benefit them. So thank you so much. A heartfelt thank you.
Thank you, Hetal. Take care.
Bye bye.